Hi everyone, how are you? Just a quick video response today to your journals. A couple of things to say before we get down to business. I wanted you to know, in case you weren't tuning in last week, we had a couple of late additions to the class, so just to be conscious of a couple of things. A lot of information you need to know to get through this class is in the syllabus, so I encourage you all to look at the syllabus and read it in detail. Second thing is we have our midterm, as you'll see, coming up soon. The midterm will be taken in class, in school rather, at the computer testing center at the Chillicothe campus, and instructions on how to take the midterm will be uploaded for you today. They'll be available on Blackboard, and I'll put in an announcement on Blackboard when that's available. You will want to look closely at the study guide because it gives you in-depth explanation about how you take the exam, where you take the exam, the process you need to follow to set up your appointment to take the exam, because you'll have a whole week to take it, and you'll take it at a time of your choosing during that week. So the key thing about it is just to give yourself plenty of time to study. Make sure you get your appointment booked in good time, and give yourself plenty of time to study. And I strongly recommend using flashcards. Not that the exam is sort of an out-to-get-you memorization exam. That would be difficult for a class like this, and it's not really what I'm trying to get out of you. I'm not really so much interested in memorization as I am interested in comprehension. So if you're using flashcards, the key thing is not to get too worried about memorization. The key thing is to try to focus on the logic of the questions, and to think the questions, to be able, and the flashcards, if you use them the right way around, they will help you think the questions through, and that's really what we're after here. So I hope to see you guys doing well on that exam, and my goal is to help you as much as possible. The study exam is very thorough, and there'll be one or two questions you'll be maybe unclear about. That's cool. It's an exam. It would be wrong if the exam was easy. So it's a little bit challenging, but it won't be too hard. You will need to make sure you're studied up, though. You don't go into the exam thinking you can just walk through it. Okay, so now let's talk about the journals for this week. I have to say, first of all, great journals. We had about 5 entries. That's a little bit low. I think we have more students in the class than 5. So if you're not uploading journals from last week, don't worry about last week. Just focus on this week's now, and we will be working to try to make sure we're staying on time with the class. So just try to stay focused on where we are now, instead of worrying about where you are in the past. So just a couple of things to say, really, and I'll keep it short. Adam's entry is great. What I liked about Adam is the fact that he's linking the idea of that we're cultural creatures, or we're creatures of culture, to a large extent. There's this old debate, isn't there, about nature versus nurture? I'm sure you've heard of it before. What is it to be human beings? Is everything determined by our nature, or can we be socialized? Can we be educated? Schooled by our parents, schooled by the institutions in our society around us to think about things a different way. And I think the evidence is very clear that we are largely creatures of culture. And when we think about how our culture shapes our attitudes to things like torture, we see very clearly that there's a tendency here that we have as Westerners. I'm Irish, but you guys are Americans, and I think Westerners overall, we tend to think of things in terms of market style interactions. Where we like the idea of utility. We like the idea, that people act out of their best interests. And what that means, if we think people act out of their best interests, then we think that everything can be thought rationally, and that there might be a rational time or a basis in our history from time to time to think that we have, as a culture, act rationally too, because we are, after all, collections of rational people. In possession of the full facts. And I think what our discussion of torture is designed to sort of reflect on, and I think that's what Adam's getting at here, is the idea that the idea of a sort of a scenario whereby we just try to think through the rationality of a torture of an abstract enemy is completely flawed in some respects, because it forgets this notion of culture. It forgets this notion, as he says, of ethics. 9/11 brought us back to reality somewhat and showed us that we are subject to an attack of violence just as much, if not more so, than any other country. This would be one area of example where experience would shape our responses and opinions towards a specific subject. The state states that ethics and politics are inseparable. That's the key point there. That ethics is a story we tell ourselves, about who we are. And of course, the question is then, as people who think that we can calculate through a question like rationality in the abstract, we think, well, if it must be true in the abstract, it has to be true in reality as well. And of course, what we find is that by applying the abstract model to the real situation, the abstract model has already trained us to forget to ask certain questions, nuanced questions, which make the story complicated. And I think that's what Adam's bringing in here, is the ultimate complication of the story. And a lot of the videos we looked at for that module really drill home the idea that so-called enhanced interrogation techniques, whatever, are popular or became popular, but often without thinking about how they could come back at us. And I think also there's this bigger question of, and I certainly thought about this, moving on down to Jennifer's response here. What I liked about Jennifer's response is it sort of asked us to think about, well, America was subject to a horrible attack, and that's true. And there's a need to sort of create a mental space to think about how America would want to respond to that. And I think that's a really important point. But again, it's the question of how America was founded, the values that it's based on, and whether America is willing to sacrifice those values in defending the country. My question, I think, for Jennifer would be, despite the fact that I agree with pretty much everything she's saying, what I worry about is the consequences of thinking that way when it comes to questions like how we then imagine torture to be legitimate or not. One of the things Jennifer was sort of keen to refer to here was, well, look at what they do to our soldiers. This part here, when they are captured, and waterboarding is not as bad as that. I mean, I think that it's a very interesting question. Certainly, Jennifer, you're right. I can remember the detainment of and treatment of Blackwater mercenaries being displayed on the television for everyone to see. But by and large, there haven't been a lot of Americans detained, and where they have, the data is ambiguous. Jessica Lynch, for example, was quite well treated, despite the hubbub and hullabaloo made about her detainment and the way she was supposedly going to be treated. And it turns out, in fact, that she was quite well treated. So, it's not so easy to say, look what they do to our soldiers. And the decapitations on the global, that just didn't happen very often. It happened a few times. But it didn't happen a lot, and often it didn't just happen to soldiers. As I said, it happened to mercenaries, or it happened to Daniel Pearl, maybe the journalist, for the Wall Street Journal. But America has detained many, many, many more people than they have detained, would be one response. And then the other response is, well, what makes us us? Aren't you somehow letting the enemy win to a huge degree if you're willing to sacrifice your own values to win, to defeat them? George Bush famously said that the reason America was attacked was because they hate our freedom, and it seems to me that one way you would win then would be to not sacrifice that freedom. But if you're willing to sacrifice your liberties, your basic values, to defeat an enemy, I think you run the risk of losing some credibility in that regards. Anyway, just an interesting point. So we had some other great responses here. My overall impression is that these entries were just really well written, and we have some great work done. I have to say, top marks to everyone this module. All the entries were very detailed and very nuanced, and I just want to applaud everyone for taking the time. It's a difficult topic. It's emotionally difficult and factually difficult. It requires a lot of philosophy. In a way, one's own personal philosophy has to be thought through. So just top marks to everyone for really doing the best work this week. I teach this class quite a bit, and I know that the varieties of effort that can be made in this class can be quite widespread. But this is really good work this week. So thanks, everyone. Right, I'm going to let you go now, and we'll talk to you soon. Just make sure you get the exam study guide, and make sure you get your journals for Module 3 uploaded tonight. Today's Monday the 25th, and I will talk to you by video again this week, probably Wednesday. Alright, thanks so much for your patience, guys. Thanks for watching in, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.